Hello and welcome to the first mapping it out of the year. My name is Guy and I'm going to be your host tonight as we journey behind the scenes of exactly what is going on in the DungeonFog studios in Vienna. And so we've got a great show for you tonight. We missed out over January as the crew were desperately working on things. So what are we going to be going through tonight? Well, firstly, before we get there, this show is about you asking questions. So if you have a question, please put the word question in caps in front of your question so that I can see it. I would really appreciate that. And I will answer your questions at the end of each segment so that we have the appropriate guest to answer them. So what are we talking about tonight? Well, tonight we're talking about the 100,000 or the 100K asset challenge. 100,000 assets on a single map. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit. I'm sure if you're like me, you're getting excited over that idea and the implications that it had. But let me tell you, the 100,000 asset challenge took place behind the scenes in December. So we're going to find out more about that. We're going to be looking at the Mac version. It has finally arrived. So all of those of you who like to use Macs, because you do, then you should be happy. We're going to get a Mac demo from the champion of Macs, or perhaps not. We're going to get a demo from one of our guests on how the new Mac version is looking of Project DEIOS. And I think that's super exciting. We're going to see some more Project DEIOS software in action as well, so that is something definitely to look forward to. We then shift gears and move from DEIOS to DungeonFog. DungeonFog having done its big shift to version 5 now, some brand new features which are super cool, and we're going to look at that as well as the roadmap for DungeonFog moving forward for 2021 and the winners of the 2020 competition for the maps that happened last year. Those have been decided and they will be announced on the stream as well. So it's a full stream. Let's get straight into the thick of it. The 100K asset challenge. So joining me, of course, is none other than Till. Till, how are you doing, sir?
Hi, I'm doing fine. Happy New Year, everyone, because as Guy said, we haven't had the opportunity to do a December stream, so the last time we saw each other was basically, well, at least in mapping it out, in November last year. And boy, let me tell you, that feels like ages ago.
It really does.
Yes, I'm happy. Yeah, it does. It's insane. I mean, I had a chat with Keora yesterday, and back in December, when I spoke to him, I wished Merry Christmas and said goodbye. And we said, let's talk early January. And yesterday we talked. So it was like, time is flying by. But it also, like, especially because we did so much. It was so much going on and things have changed quite a bit with version 5, with the patch, with the DEIOS update, and so on and so forth. So it is well deserved to feel like a long time ago.
Absolutely. Now, Till, this is the new time slot for the mapping it out DEIOS moving forward.
Yes,
is that correct?
That is correct, because of the lockdown and because I now have my own studio here at home, I can do streaming in the evening. I don't have to drive to the office, get home from the office late in the evening. So I can basically just go into this room, start streaming. And that is, I feel, a lot better for our guests and friends in America. And still a good time for us here in Europe.
There you are. And now the other thing is that you are doing other streams as well. Just give us a little bit of heads up on what else you're doing.
Yes, so because of that and because of just me wanting to use that studio that I have built here, I've decided that I'm trying to do 2 streams a week, one on Tuesday, that is our regular 1-hour community stream on DungeonFog, mainly about battle maps because I want to collect the DEIOS stuff for our mapping it outs. And on Thursdays, I'm prepping my maps for my next game. which I'm incidentally still calling office games, although that is not true. But then I'm doing my maps. So on Thursdays, it starts at 7:30 UTC and is until I'm finished. And on Tuesdays, it's starting at 7 UTC, so this time, and is about an hour long.
There you are. Now, does that mean we're going to stop talking about DungeonFog Battle Map Maker in the DEIOS shows?
Probably. I'm still very new to this, so we will see how this plays out, how much I get questions, I can answer questions, how much I can show in the weekly streams. I like the idea of collecting, even for you as our mainly DEIOS-focused crowd, to collect some updates from DungeonFog, but probably it will be more rundown of what has happened in this month. And it's maybe be a bit briefer than usually.
There you are. Okay, so 100K, the 100,000 assets. What is that all about?
Well, we knew from the start that if we want to do DEIOS, we are talking about giant maps. We've been always talking about Earth-sized maps, or even I don't know, Venus-sized maps, so gigantic maps. So we knew from the start that we need to have a system that can deal with a lot of assets. And when we launched Alpha 1, we were quite interested to see how far can we push our alpha in the first state, and then with the patch in the second state. So we kind of set our bar to say, if we reach 100,000 assets on one map, we have achieved a major step forward. And that is the challenge.
Did you get to that challenge then?
No. No, we didn't. Because of several reasons that I think we're going to talk about today, we realized that with the way that we are addressing our build, we're not going to reach 100,000 assets. Because for those of you who are playing around with Alpha 1, you might have noticed that at some point, probably at 1,000 assets, things are getting quite resource intense. And so we said, basically based on what you send us through your crash reports and your user reports, we basically sat down and said, okay, how can we fix that? How can we reach our goal of 100,000 assets, and can we go even further?
Okay, so that sounds like it's a process, and there is an official process that you guys went through, isn't there?
Yes. So basically, we didn't invent a new process here. We basically followed the regular process, which is analyze the problem, come up with better ideas if it's not working, and then try to fix what is broken. So the first part of that is analytics.
Yes.
And that is where you as our community were gold. Because we've received so many crash reports and we've received so many user reports that it was quite easy to put your fingers down on the problem. So we didn't have to dig open our code and look for wires that aren't connected properly. You basically just showed us where those wires are, and we just had to understand how we can improve there.
Okay, and what was basically what was happening? What was causing the 100K not to be reached?
I think that would be much easier to explain if we shift into the animation that I have prepped,
right,
because there I can show that quite easily.
All right. Okay, so here we go.
Right. So what you're seeing here is basically the initial architecture that we had in mind when we conceptualized DEIOS in the first place. And when you're looking at that, you can read it from the left to the right. It's a very, very simplified graphic, just not to overcomplicate things. But what you're seeing here is basically that on the left, you have the editor UI that is connected to the front end, that is connected to the map database and the web API. So we have a front-end hub that collects all that information. This front-end hub is powered by or is run on the Chromium embedded framework, and we used a specific library that's called UI to create our user interface. So everything that you see that is UI, the tool buttons, the dashboard, the My Maps library, all of that was run through Chromium embedded framework. And once you input something, it gets processed through WebGPU, which is basically a way of communicating with your graphics cards and is connecting your renderer with the things that you're doing before you get at the end of that line, the map output. And all of that is connected through a live wire, basically the pipeline that takes all that information and sends that to those components. And that is called the RPC, the remote procedure caller. And that is how we constructed it. Now, I think you can go to the next part. When we got all your feedback, and we've looked at how the application is working, we realized that our RPC is creating a lot of bottlenecks. So for example, if you have something that you want to store in the map database, you have to go through the app frontend, communicate with the editor UI, which means talk to the Chromium embedded framework, and then go through WebGPU to the renderer before we can output it. So that was one of the problems that we identified, where we saw, okay, our RPC is basically just bottlenecking on so many places in the application that whatever we're going to do, if we're not restructuring the way that we communicate internally, we will always have at some point a bottleneck that we will need to address individually. So that was one learning. The other learning was that if you continue on the slide, that we have, and I've been talking about that in our Kickstarter update, and I think in the previous mapping it out as well. It was a bad call to use WebGPU because WebGPU is too early to be really used yet. And I would say about 90, probably 85% of the crash reports that we got, we were getting because of WebGPU. That was basically, so one reason why we couldn't make the 100K challenge was because the application was crashing because of driver issues or because of out of memory issues. So the application ran out of memory when dealing with too many assets, which was also related to the Chromium embedded framework, because the Chromium embedded framework is very resource intense and was also draining a lot of memory. You remember the layer list that we're having. The more assets you put there, the more layers we are creating in the Chromium embedded framework, the slower the application gets. So we basically identified 3 core problems that we said, okay, if we want to reach 100K assets, we need to get rid of those. We need to fix them. And that is basically what we did since we got the results from the patch 1.1, so 0.1.1, that you were sending in November, so late November and early December. And then we had to sit down and say, okay, what are we going to do with that? And yes.
All right. So I'm just going to jump in there while we've got this video going. This original approach that you guys took, This, your original design, this was a standard sort of design process. This is not something that's revolutionary. This is what people would normally have started with. Is that right?
Yes, I would say so. I'm not a programmer, so I can't really say how different this is. But I would say it's rather usual to have a structure like that. The problem was mainly that we bet on components that were still in development or new, or let's say, I mean, we all know Chromium Embedded Framework, and it was probably a bit just hybris that we thought that we could get the grips on that we could tame Chromium Embedded Framework to our needs. But yeah, technically speaking, it's basically it's rather regular.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's the one question. Then the other question is, what was it like having a conversation with the team saying, we're not getting there. We have to fix.
So the hardest part was to let go of things, because we've spent so much time in code. I mean, you can imagine, assume you're writing, I don't know, 100 pages document, and then you decide, I have to scrap at least 80 pages out of that. So there was this very painful decision. Can we fix it? Can we make it without getting rid of code? And the answer was no. And the reason why we had to make this call is because DEIOS is in its early stages. Oh, interesting.
Sorry, I don't know why it's on green. Keep going. DEIOS was in its early stages?
DEIOS was in its early stages. And if you're in such an early state and you're already running into those problems, and again, for those of you who have tested the alpha, landmass drawing and prop placement, that's basically it. So you don't want to stress your luck going further down in development when you're already seeing problems in your core build. And just to remember everyone, that's what I've said and said and said. The reason why we're running an alpha is to make sure that our build, our foundation is solid in the technical alpha. And once we have that, we can then add new features. So it was painful. It was we had a little bit of back and forth and discussion. Can we do it? Should we do it? Can we make it in time? How much time do we lose based on that decision? But in the end, and we're going to see the results today, it was the right call.
So did you have an inkling of the decision being the right one when you started to implement it? Did you know it was going to work?
Yeah. No. Well, to some extent, me personally, no. For me, it was a leap of faith. But that's why you have developers who are capable and who know their business. So I trusted them when I said, okay, can we do this? And I said, yes, we can definitely do this. I was pulling up my backup plans and plan B and plan C and D of what happens if we do not see progress until Christmas. But they made an incredible job. And around Christmas, I was seeing the first results. And then it was just, let's do this.
Let's do it. Absolutely. All right. So we're going to bring up that video again. And it's just going to go through the whole process. So this is what we started.
So what you see is our initial architecture. Sorry, do you want me to
no,
repeat everything?
Go for it.
No, I'm just kidding.
Absolutely. So there you identify those problems, and then this is after the decision-making process.
This is our decision-making progress. So this is what we did. We basically pulled everything much closer to the renderer. We have the map database directly communicating to the renderer. The editor UI now is part of the renderer. So it's not the Chromium embedded framework talking through RPC with the renderer, but instead we found a library that works perfectly fine in the renderer. It is a little bit, how do you say, it's a wild steed, the new UI library. So we have to tame it a little bit first. So what you're going to see today is our first steps into re-establishing the designs. But I'm quite happy with that. And everything else is basically also connected or pulled into the core much closer, so we don't have to pipe everything through the RPC. And when you look at the bottom, you will see that we have said goodbye to Web GPU. And we have decided, even in the process, we then decided to even step one step down and say, okay, we're not going for DirectX 12 or we're not going for Vulkan directly, not now, but we're going for OpenGL 3.3, DirectX 11 and Metal, because that is something that even older machines can run easily. And the second we then go into more complex calculations and more complex rendering, we can then see, can we run it on those older graphic engines, or do we then need to introduce Vulkan later down the road? But right now it's running on OpenGL and DirectX 11 or Metal if you're running it on Mac. So that was basically what we said, what we did, how we wanted to restructure it. That was our plan. And then the developers started to do that.
So that's a major rebuild. What happened on that front then? You said they hit the wall, or they hit the ground running in December. How's it looking?
Yes. So right now we're in the process of bringing all those components back together, which basically means we have we're almost finished with having the core components done, and now we're bringing all the tools back in and the tool functionality. If you want to see how it's looking, we should just jump in, shouldn't we?
Well, before we get there, because you've done all of this restructuring, you've done all of this analysis, and that's brilliant. That's fantastic. That's what we want. We want to make sure this is the best product possible. Does it match, or does it make the 100K target?
You know, I still don't know, but we will find out today.
Okay, we're going to find out today. All right, are you ready to do a little bit of a demo for us then? Is that what you're saying? Here we go, folks. You saw
Yes.
it here first.
Okay, wait. I need to switch screens.
Yeah.
Sorry, give me a second because I have Zoom here and I need to shift that. Okay, and 3, 2, 1, switch.
Okay. What are we seeing?
Okay, so first of all, for those with especially sharp and keen eyes, you will see that the UI has changed a little bit because we haven't fully established the new design. But mainly you see all the same functionalities that we have before. So I can go in and I can draw landmasses. I can go in and I can place props. And what I did today, actually, was I was just trying to see how many assets can I bring onto the map. And I started to draw. I started to create, and as you can see, I didn't really have the intention to make a beautiful map, but just to stack it up with assets. So here I did a little volcanic island. There we have desert. And now it's getting more interesting, I would say, because now I went crazy with creating more and more mountains. And maybe I should zoom out a little bit because I created more and more mountains. And at the end, I created something which I'm calling the Sleeping Lady. And then I went over and created even more stuff. So we have, let's zoom in back again a little bit. And all of that is, those are single assets. So I can select an asset and I can move it around. Those really are single assets. Everything here is a single asset that I've placed on the map. And I did a little townscape, and we even have hidden mines and trolls or stone giants hiding in the mountains. And then I went over and created a little elven forest up here, guarded by those stone giants. And then we can follow the road up to the Northern Kingdom. And as you can see, it goes on and on and on. And I was just throwing assets at the map. And now we're in Phoenix Land. And we have a little jungle area here. And a lot of mountains. And even more and even more and even more. Let me zoom out a little bit so that you get a better hold of that picture. So that was the map that I was creating today. And unfortunately, I only hit 60,000 assets. And that was for today. I was so unhappy because I was like, man, I can't really stack more assets onto this map, or it would look just stupid. So I started to cheat then, and I went outside the map. And I've created a barrier of mountains around the map that is then being attacked by pinkies. That is then followed by a wave of sea monsters. That is then followed by a wave of sea snakes. That is then followed by a wave of, we're not calling his name, it's a giant laser lizard. That is then followed by demons. That is then followed, I'm sorry, this goes on for quite some time. That is then followed by ghosts, and then we're finished. And basically, scroll. That is the map that I have created. And now look at that. Let me bring in, you should see in the upper corner, we now have 99,999 assets. So if I go into my 100K build out of my beloved stone giants, and let me just bring up another stone giant here, and then we will see if it crashes in my face.
So if you are musically inclined at this moment, you should be doing a drum roll in your head, if you please.
Okay, that one should be a little bit bigger. Let's make this 5. Okay, so here we have a giant, and let me just scroll up a bit so we can look at the counter. Come on. Oh no, I did 2. No, yes, I did a few too much. Ta-da! We did it!
Bravo.
So, challenge met. And actually, I mean, looking at the performance, let me just scroll down a little bit. I can feel that it's now dragging a little bit. And we now have this little FPS counter. If you pay attention to this number, we're now at 13 frames per second. I can still go on, like I can draw. It's still rather smooth. So it doesn't feel too problematic to draw here, although we have a enormous, ridiculous map with assets here. And if let me do a landmass here. So it's still working.
So I think it's safe to say then that the new approach has worked quite well.
Yes, it has. It has, and I'm amazed. I'm also very tired because making this map was a pain in the ass. Because you can't multi-place assets, so I had to draw them all with brush strokes. but it was quite fun. And you know that point where you're at. So when I was at 70,000 or at 80,000, I was like, I hate that. I don't want to do it. But then you're so determined to get this number. So yeah, I'm really happy that I made that.
Well,
And that is the 100K map. With quite nice details, though. I mean, I like my sandworm city. If you look into the jungle, you can see that there are ruins hidden in there, and even a lot of different assets with the flowers and.
Absolutely.
So, I had a lot of fun, although my hand is aching a little bit. And yeah, next is, and this is going to be basically what we're doing in February, is bringing back all the functionality that you had in Alpha 1, and especially bringing back the auto updater, because that will make it a lot easier to push updates to you. But I think I'm getting ahead of myself. We're going to tackle those things.
Yeah, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. So, right, should we shift back? I mean, that's such an impressive demonstration, Till. I mean, fantastic job to you and everybody at the DungeonFog offices. You guys must. I think you should actually print that out and frame it.
I'm not sure if I can find a printer that can do such a big map. And I'm really thinking of tiling that and putting that back together later is dreadful. So I will just save it and keep it for eternity.
There you go. There you go. All right, let's shift back, if you don't mind.
All right, let's shift back. 3, 2, 1, shift.
There you are. There we go. Got there.
There I am.
Slightly faster than you. Don't know why. All right, lovely. That is phenomenal. So, Till this new rebuild, how much time has this added to the overall picture? Has it added on a lot of time?
Well, looking back at November, where we said that we want to make our system like, what's the word? Stable? Are you saying that?
Stable.
Stable. Thank you. Sorry, I was losing my words here. I don't think we've lost a lot of time. Mainly, I would say we expected the alpha to have 2 or 3 patches until it's stable. That's what we've always expected. We said, okay, we're starting the alpha, then we might run into problems that we need to fix. That was our attempt of patch 0.1.1. And then we knew that there might be 2 or 3 patches to really get a stable version. Now we have that. At least from internal testing, it is already, you've just seen it. It's much more than DEIOS has ever been before. And I would say the only time that we have lost is probably a month that it is taking us now to replug in all those features. But I feel I'm strongly convinced that we will catch up over the rest of the year. Because the second we have the core stability guaranteed, and for that we will need your testing once more, we will then just start adding thingies, tools to it.
I like that. So the previous one was alpha 0.0. Is the new one going to be called like DEIOS? I don't know, demigod? I mean, can you really call it a 0.0 something with 100,000 assets? I mean, that's God status, godlike status, I should say.
We should give it a project name. We should definitely. We will run a vote on our Discord. How we should call the new patch once it's coming out. Technically speaking, it is going to be 0.1.2, because it is the second patch after, and it's still Alpha 1, because Alpha 2 will not be reached until we have fulfilled all the tools that we want to have in our Alpha. But I'm pretty confident that with 0.1.2, we will be leaving technical Alpha.
Interesting. Okay. So what have we gained anything else other than just being able to do 100,000 assets?
Well, there is a guest waiting in the line that might be able to talk about that, because yes, luckily that meant that because we were fast and quick on establishing the core, we were also able to get rid of one of our Discord macros that has been running for quite some time. We have a Discord bot that is auto-replying to you if you use a certain catchphrase in our Discord.
That's right. That's absolutely right. So, Till, this has been phenomenal. Everyone in chat is just blown away by this whole thing. Before we go to find out what's this whole hype about and what our other guest is coming to talk about, one question from the audience. We're not taking anything away from the original alpha. We're not dropping any of the features of the original alpha in the new build. That's all coming along. It's just going to get put in place as we go through. Is that correct?
Yes. I had that conversation with the developers, and we said, okay, because now it's a time game. We want to have the next patch finished by the end of February. And with the auto update implemented, the latest I would allow it to take would be mid-March. So the worst thing that can happen is that we put out the alpha with some of the tools that were working in the previous build not being finished, but having the auto updater will mean that we can automatically push it to your build whenever we have finished it. There's nothing on the list that screams delay at the moment. But again, you never know for sure. So that is our goal. That's how we want to address that. No critical features will be missing. So you will have you've seen it, you can already brush prop, you can already paint your lamp masses. So yeah, I don't think that there is something critical missing, but if something is missing, we will push it to the build once we're done with it.
Absolutely. And thanks to Damien, the DM, for asking that question. One other question, Kirk Hasty asks, can someone still join in for Project DEIOS for testing early and helping the project move forward?
Yes, you can. If you go to the DungeonFog website and follow the link, it's on the landing page. There is our DEIOS promotion. You can sign up for the pre-order, which gives you access to the alpha as well.
All right, lovely. Okay, Till, we're going to get you back a little bit later on to reveal the winners of the map contest and more. But for now, I'm going to say to you, thanks very much and goodbye. We'll see you again soon. Okay, so whilst I'm getting my next guest in, it has been asked about since pretty much the beginning, and it has been an issue that I think everyone has been desperately waiting for. So we're now being joined by, you all know him as Boaty, and he is going to be hopefully showing us a demo. Now, it's no secret, if you know me, I was a Mac user and then I saw the light. So I'm going to fall asleep during this. No, I'm not going to fall asleep during this session because of our next guest. He is absolutely awesome. And yeah, hopefully the demo goes according to plan. So here we go. Let's bring him in. He is none other than Boaty. How are you doing, sir?
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Welcome back to the stream. You haven't been on for a while. It's good to have you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we
Yes, here I am, and I don't. I'm sitting here on my bright side on the Mac end, and I can't believe you're saying that the Windows side is far better. So yes, here I am, and I want to show you something.
Okay, so yeah, let's just show us what have you got to show us to try and prove superiority? Har har.
So here I am on my desktop. I hope you can see it.
Absolutely, yes.
And as you can see, it's on a Mac. You can't see my nice stock because I couldn't bring it up. But what I'm going to show you right now is the big magic thing. Voila.
There you go.
We have the application running officially on macOS.
Now, Bertie, this can do everything that the PC version can do. There's no differences in version?
Yes, definitely. So the Mac version is the very same as the Windows version. There is absolutely no difference. Yes, let me show it to you.
Yes, please go ahead. Show us some. I was just busy counting the assets. I don't think you've got 100,000. So
no, I don't have 100,000 because I have noticed something, and limit for the amount of assets is hardware dependent. And Till has a very powerful PC, and I'm sitting here with a simple MacBook, which doesn't have the same specs. But I think we're going to talk about that later. But what I can show you is that I have made a map with around 30,000 assets.
That's right. Okay, we can see the prop count there. Yes, 13,496 assets.
Exactly.
So that's already a phenomenal number of assets. So you were talking about the hardware that you're actually running. Can you take us through the specs? What are you?
Yes, I will. But before I do that, let me show you this map too. Maybe you get which map this is. I call it the Remembered Realms. But as you can see here, just a couple of small islands, but they are definitely not 30,000 assets. So I zoom a little bit out and just move to the coast. A nice, beautiful coast I'm calling the Knife Coast. And still we don't have the 30,000 assets. So let me keep zooming out. I didn't get as extensive as Till did, but I made a nice little map of the Remembered Realms, I call it. And everything you're seeing here was created on my Mac just 2 hours ago. And it haven't crashed just once, and it works flawlessly. So back to your question, what are my specs? I have as already mentioned, a MacBook Pro with no dedicated graphics card. So it's just a CPU with onboard graphics, 4 cores, I think, and 16 gigabytes of RAM because I'm a graphic designer and I need the RAM. But I still don't have a graphics card. And it's butter smooth. I can zoom in, out, scroll around, still place props.
Absolutely. We're seeing a slight delay because obviously you are running this through Zoom to the studio here in the UK. So that is absolutely phenomenal. And I can see you and Till went to the same school of reveal with that. I have an island, now I have a continent. This is fantastic.
Yes, it is.
And you said this didn't take you very long to do, you said?
No, it didn't. And that was the super surprising thing to me because I, of course, created stuff with the previous alpha. And it took me much longer to get to something like this because not just the crashes, but the performance just wasn't there. And now it is. And I want to show that to you so you can see my hardware. I have the same debug screen Till already showed.
Yes.
And on this map, I get around 30 to 40 FPS. It's now dropped, but I believe this is because of the screen sharing. Usually I have around 40 FPS.
Yes.
But remember, these are 14,000 props on a MacBook.
Exactly.
Without a dedicated graphics card.
Yes. A question has come through from Lazus, who is asking, which year or size MacBook Pro are you using?
This is a 13-inch 2019 model.
All right, 13-inch 2019 model. So almost a year and a bit ago. Okay, fantastic. Fantastic. Now, whilst we've got you here, the user interface, that's really your area of focus. This is not nearly what it's going to look like when it's finished. Is that correct?
It is not, but we are on a great way there. One of my bloggers on December, where we talked about the rebuilding, restructuring thing, was that I do not want to sacrifice user experience, really. It wasn't for me about the pixel perfect designs we created. That wasn't the intention. What I wanted is to have a good feeling. The old alpha had nice animations, which we, for instance, don't have right now, but that's something we don't need really out of the user experience point of view. That's something just nice and shiny, but that's not necessary for alpha build. But what I already see here and what the developers showed me, I'm pretty confident we can do everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, this sounds like another question from the audience for Mac users. Damien, the DM, says, have you guys considered M1 compatibility?
Yes, we did. And that's something I like with this Mac version, I strongly want natively. But what it has shown is that the included Rosetta 2 emulator is quite potent. That means if we don't have the M1 compatibility out of the box with the next alpha release, we will have it somewhere on the road.
All right, so it's definitely in the cards. It might just not necessarily straight away. Yeah. Fantastic. Let me just check.
And that's something what we also got with this rebuilding, that we are far less dependent on other things like Chromium and the framework and stuff, so we can do our own M1 conversion, because before that we had to wait until all these other components and so on upgraded or made their libraries compatible with M1 too.
There you are. All right. Hans Joachim Meyer asks, is that also native on Apple Silicon?
That was the question right now. It was a very simple question.
It was the same question. You see, this is why Apple, I mean, it's just why Apple Silicon M1. I mean, come on. All right. I'm just being mean. Now, Ben Clayton raises the question about Linux. Is there a timescale for alpha for Linux?
Well, let me phrase it like this. Linux is working like the Mac version, so expect it with the Mac drop.
There you go. So Linux is working. Brilliant. Okay. Well, that's fantastic. We should get you on the show more often. It's like, yes, this is working. Yes, this is working. This is working. There you are. Okay. Boaty, thank you so much for joining us. I don't see any other questions coming through on that. And you've answered them really well. So I really, really appreciate that. I've just got to message Till here to have him standing by to join in. Now, Boaty, thank you. And hopefully we will get you back in soon so we can talk more about things that you just say yes to. Okay, so that was Boaty, folks. I mean, it is nice when we have all the shinies starting to come together. And I must admit, when we started to talk about this whole change and shift, The team was definitely dedicated to make it happen as quick as they could, and to see where we are now and what it can do. 100,000 assets, I still can't get over that. It's absolutely fantastic. Now, it has also had trickle-on effects to other things like DungeonFog, for example, and that's what we're now shifting our attention to. And so I've got Till back with me, and he is going to talk about a few updates that have happened in the past, his inability to count, and the competition, which hopefully we will see some gorgeous maps. So here we go. Till, welcome back.
What inability to count? Wait.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, we're releasing version 5. What was the old version? Version 3.
Yeah. Well, we could have called it Vista or XP or whatsoever. The thing is, initially it was planned to be released as version 4 in summer last year. But then COVID happened and suddenly DEIOS was delayed, and we've pulled all our forces into DEIOS. And we said, okay, first we need to bring out DEIOS Alpha 1 before we can finish our DungeonFog stuff. And with all the things going on, especially with the brushes and the calculations and the understanding of how those things work, we've realized that we can do more than we have initially planned for version 4. And we kind of jumped that version in development because version 5 already contained a lot of things that weren't even possible before. And yeah, and then there was this weird discussion where I said, how are we going to call this? Are we going to call this version 4? And he said, well, technically it's already version 5. And I was like, well, okay, then let's call it version 5. So there we are. Yeah,
there you go.
It's version 5. It sounds a lot better. It looks even cooler. V5.
Okay, all right. Any of you who like the number 4, apparently you're no longer cool. From Till's mouth. Now, Till, we're talking about version 5. What are some of the highlights that have come out for version 5? For those of you who've missed all of the highlights. I mean, there's so many of them. I can't stop raving over it. But Till, what are your highlights?
That was 5? Last year. Okay, so we've reworked the brush tool. This is probably the biggest change because the initial brush tool was based on strokes. And now we've changed that to shapes. So we can calculate the brush into shapes, more or less like the landmass tool in DEIOS does. And that opens the gates for so many new things that you can do with the brushes. So that was one big change. The second big change was the shapes tool. Which is now also rendered in the same way as the brushes are, which again allows much more editability to the, look there, I said it, editability. Sorry. Yeah, the shapes tool. Help me out. There might be even more, but I can't remember right now. We've had community assets.
Rooms.
Oh, right. Rotation, duplication of rooms. Exactly. Thank you very much. You see, that's why you're the map expert in DungeonFog.
Duplication of levels. Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Big
yes.
tools. Big tools.
So a lot of things have happened. Also, a lot of things broke. That is typical for when you're trying to get so many things out. That was also the decision to say, okay, we're leaving the version 3 maps alone. We're not going to touch them or to convert them because brushes are changing because of the way that they are calculated and rendered. They're changing from what you did. And this is one of the highest priorities for us is we do not want to touch your maps. What you do with your maps is your design decision. And if we start to auto-convert them and they look different afterwards, it would be shameful. So we said, okay, this is a decision that you as an artist make. If you want to raise your maps to version 5, you convert them automatically. And so we introduced this version switch, which at the end turned out to be quite a pain in the ass because of the campaigns. We didn't really anticipate how problematic it can be to run campaigns on 2 different versions, especially when you're a game master mid-session and you're switching and the old version cannot do things that the new version can do. So over December, we have established a way to bring that together. So right now, we have fixed all those bugs. If you're opening a V3 version, you will not be able to run your campaigns. You have to convert them in V5. Otherwise, you will get just terribly confused. And we said, okay, this is my call. Version 5 is the new standard. So we're moving forward, but we're giving you access to your old maps. We had the map contests. We had the community assets. So yeah, it was quite a ride.
It was indeed. And chat is adding to that list as well. Forecaster71 reminds you that there's transparent windows and doors, which are breathtaking.
Right.
So there is definitely that. Damien the DM, the new campaign features, which are also something that we're going to be talking about in a little bit. But yes, then there's also mention of the Foundry VTT integration. Now that has reached a pinnacle, hasn't it? That's got to almost perfect at this stage. So talk to us. How is that integration going?
Almost perfect is a bit of an exaggeration, because we just discovered, thanks to Examinator, who has always been a thoroughly tester, we have discovered one bug that we are still working on. We're going to push an update to that. But apart from that, it works. And your feedback is, well, as always, appreciated, and will help us to iron out the last wrinkles. But basically what you can do now is you can export your map in a new format that was established by the developers of Dungeon Draft. He called it the Universal VTT file or format. And we said, yeah, okay, that's clever, because if there is a standard on the market that everyone would pay attention to, it's a lot easier for upcoming VTT developers to just use that, and we don't have proprietary code everywhere, and you have to write always a different importer for always different formats. So we said, okay, that's clever, we will use it. We reached out to Mooman, who was the developer of the importer script in Foundry, and said, hey, would you adapt your module? And he was happily helping us. So now we have the option that you can export your map and import it. And you could have done that before, but it was just a picture. Now you get the dynamic walls. So if you have tokens with line of sight, this is automatically blocked in Foundry, because all those walls are auto set there. And so are doors, windows. Again, our doors and windows still need to be adjusted a little bit. And, which is very exciting, light sources. So you can bring a light source from DungeonFog to its best intent. It's not really a compatible way. We're calculating light sources differently, but we found a good solution to bring light sources into Foundry, and they are controllable through Foundry then on your VTT, which is amazing. It's just fantastic. Amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so that's good news, and then obviously you guys will continue working on that until it's at 100%.
Yes. I can, if you're interested, I can show how this works.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
let's have a look.
okay. Again, I need to shift my Zoom meeting over there, and I need to go into DungeonFog. No, that's not DungeonFog. That's DungeonFog. Let me. You ready?
Yes,
1,
sir.
2, 3, switch.
There you are.
There I am. So I just, because we're going to tackle those later, I have hijacked the map, one of the winner maps from the Cyberpunk contest. And here on the top, you will find your export options, which are PNG, JPEG, WebP, PDF, multi-page PDF, and now Universal VTT. Let me just quickly name that level. I think that map was called Beers Guns. And I have several options, so I can say use the native light or do not use the native light, show the grid on export, show the GM information, which would still bake those informations into the image, so you don't really want to do that. I could export tokens if there are any. I'm not 100% certain if we already hand over tokens. I don't know this right now, but this is definitely on the list of things that we want to do, that if you place tokens on a map in DungeonFog, export it, it will be then a token list in Foundry. So let's leave it like that and then click on export. It will create the Beers and Guns DF to VTT file. And when I now go into Foundry, under my map section, I have the Universal Battle Map import, and there I can, let's name that properly, Beers and Guns, and I can pick a file, and that would be this one, open. And then there are a few settings, like the fidelity slider, for example, defines how round you want those rounded corners to be. Now, as a note, the higher you raise it, the more performance Foundry needs to render those lines. So I'm keeping it at low level because it's just the way that walls react to line of sight. It's, for me personally, it's not a big issue to have edgy corners because the map is still rounded. It's just where is the light detection triggering. Okay, so someone taught me to put the offset at 0.1. I don't really know why, but we have a help desk article that was just released, and there you'll find all the details about that. So now I click on import, and it will run the import script. And once it is done, which is now, I can see that Beers and Guns is now imported. And if I switch to that map, I can now see that I already have all the walls. And there you see that doors sometimes still have an issue. So that is in the making. And I should see my light sources. Yes, there is one light source, and I can move that around.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. Couldn't be simpler, really.
No.
Lovely.
No, it's amazing. And again, we're working on it. We're improving it. We're working with Foundry and with Moomin on making improvements for it. And just as a side note, I am so impressed with Foundry. This is by far the most advanced, up-to-date virtual tabletop that I've seen out there. And we're so happy that we're supporting Foundry and that we're working with them and that they are nice people working with us. So thank you. Amazing.
Well, lovely. Okay, let's shift back if you're ready.
Yes.
3, 2,
yes, I'm ready.
And shift. Okay, yes. So we've got some questions coming in. Before we go to Well, we've got some other questions from my side as well, but just before we get there, let's take some questions from the audience. Damien, the DM, says, will each legacy version be supported? So when version 7 or 6 or 9 comes out next, will it be handled so automatically like 5th does?
No, it was quite painful to have 2 versions to deal with. And remember that we're trying to not support backwards, but we're trying to improve. So there might be always a 2-version switch where version 5 is still legacy and version 6 is the new one. But over the course of this year, we will slowly start to nudge you to convert your maps. Because at some point it doesn't make sense to make backward compatibility updates for a version 3 when we are already getting to version 6.
There you are. His follow-up question to that is, how reliable is the upgrade from V3 to V5? Does it break the maps?
That was something that we have been working on for the past month now. Fixing all those things. You remember, Guy, you've been one of our core testers. So I had a lot of bug reports from Guy where he reached out and said, hey, my map broke again, V5, I hate it. But it's getting less and less and less and less. And at the point where we feel there is no problem anymore and it's hardly ever crashing on someone, this will be the point when we will then really poke you and say, hey, please convert your map. So it's also, there are a lot of wizards that are helping you. Like when you convert a map, you will be asked, do you want to convert those brushes or do you want to delete the brushes? You can decide, you can test both because you're not saving the map until we ask you, are you happy? Do you want to save the map? So you can always revert to the previous V3 version. Yeah.
No, it makes sense.
I hope that answers the question.
I think so. I think it makes absolute sense. Okay. I didn't see any more questions on that. So then, in terms of VTTs, are you planning on joining or integrating with other VTTs out there?
Okay, without naming any other VTTs, we have been looking at a couple of them. And some of them are just terrible. Like from a programmer's point of view or from a user point of view, that if you want to integrate into that VTT, you have to follow a 12-step guide just to get if I would follow that guide until the end, I would have drawn my dynamic walls easily. So yes, there are a few out there, which I'm not going to name, that we are still trying to get in touch with and see if they are willing to integrate. I'm also, I think we're getting at a point where it even might make sense to kind of form an alliance and say, hey, there are now 2 map makers out there who support this format. How about you support this format too? We will see. 2021 will show us more. We're not saying no. We're not doing this exclusively to Foundry, but there are still obstacles that need to be overcome first.
That makes sense. And of course, then a sort of VTT Lite is the map viewer within DungeonFog. And there are things that are planned for that. Can you shed some light on those?
Oh, yes. So I'm preaching this. DungeonFog is not a virtual tabletop. That is why we are working with Foundry, for example. DungeonFog is a map-making tool. But it is a map-making tool that has quite some cool features if you want to play on an interactive map that is changing while you play on it. So we said, okay, we can support to some extent viewers where you can create a campaign, you bring your maps into that campaign, and then you can run your games on those campaigns directly through DungeonFog. And with yesterday, with the Foundry VTT update, we've also released quite some interesting new features for our campaigns, which is, for example, that tokens do not have to have borders anymore. You can now turn off the border for tokens. And just as a slight hint, if you have been on Chaora's website recently, he has released a token hoard that is for free, where you can download tokens, and they are amazing. And you can upload them as custom assets, and later down the road, they will be available in DungeonFog through our marketplace as well. So there will be a lot of options to get Chaora tokens without any borders, as he has designed them in DungeonFog. So that was one thing. The other thing that has been highly requested, I think it is top one of our request list when it comes to the viewers, was please, 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 can my players move their tokens? Yes, they can move their tokens now. So players can, if you allow it, they can move tokens, and we have the wall detection, so they can't just freely move around the map. They need to use doors to enter rooms. And probably windows, I don't know. The GM can always interact. Like, the GM can always be like, oh, you're now in that room, and he can move that. Please don't come with, but I can teleport, and I can do this, and I can do that, and my players should be able to teleport by themselves. Again, we're not a VTT. This is not our intention. We're not going to replicate rule sets. We're giving you a good option to allow players to move their tokens on a map that you're sharing with them. But there is another nice feature that we have added, and that is you can assign a viewport to a specific token, so that the viewport is automatically following while the player is moving his token. And I assume a bunch of other things. Yeah, you have distance metrics for players, so they can see how far they are moving. What else? I just wrote the patch notes yesterday, but I've already forgotten all of them.
It sounds like there's a huge amount in there already, which is fantastic.
Yes. So if you're interested, head over to DungeonFog. It's in the news items. It's the latest news because it was just released yesterday. And there you will see all the things that we did. And also in the patch notes, all the bugs that we have fixed so far. And as always, if you run across a new one, or if you feel like you've encountered a problem, use our help desk or send a ticket to support@dungeonfog.com, and we will look at it.
All right. So, do we have a bit of a roadmap for DEIOS moving forward, for DungeonFog moving forward?
Yes, absolutely. And we can bring it.
Bring it up.
I think. Bring it up. Okay. So, this is our roadmap. As you know, this is our third year now. Our roadmaps change, but this is at least what we've put on our table for this year, what we want to achieve. In the first quarter, we want to have a VTT exporter. Check. We want to have campaign updates. Check. And now we're going to look at the GM notes rework and the text tool, because finally we want to label maps with text. And if you remember, we have been supporting Symbolicon and Fonticon Kickstarter campaigns that were running in the same time period as DEIOS did, shortly afterwards. So we have quite a big font library and icon library that we finally want to bring into DungeonFog and then into DEIOS. So a text tool is in the making. I've already played around with the first prototype. And now that you can duplicate rooms, we've been talking about this for 1.5 years now. We finally want to make room templates that are basically then working as saved rooms that you can take out of your library and place on a map, so you don't have to redraw rooms, and you can basically copy rooms across maps then. When it comes to Marketplace, we are Hopefully by the end of next week or in 14 days, we are finally done with the marketplace for internal testing, and we will open it for internal testing. We're working there very closely with Keora, who will be our first external artist selling assets on the marketplace. And once we're happy with the results, we will then open it up for all the other artists out there. And then, just generally speaking, with all the V5 updates in there, with all the campaigns updates in there, we have to pay close attention to performance improvements and stability, even in DungeonFog and the renderer, because we're already putting quite some stress on a browser-based renderer, and we don't want to completely go overboard. So we always have to go back and tweak and optimize to make it still a stable experience. What is upcoming in February is definitely a community vote, because I fixed the GM nodes. I said we need to address them. And if we would make them available for voting, they might lose again, because you always want new tools, which is amazing. But our GM nodes suffer from that. So the GM nodes are fixed, but I will ask you for a vote what to do next. Do you want us to rework our campaign user interface? Do you want us to introduce the new tool for walls and paths? Or do you want us to rework our room tool, for example, to allow you freehand drawing of rooms, or have circle shapes that you can place down to create circular rooms from scratch? So this is going to be a vote. This is something that you will vote on. And then I will publish this, by the way, on the DungeonFog website. Then we have, just quickly going through the list, we have an asset manager rework, which means the way that we're organizing our assets will first internally be reworked, and then will be reflected in the new interface that will allow you text searching and new categorizations. So it's going to be a lot easier to find assets in DungeonFog this year. We want to improve our textures. We've been talking about this last year, but it just didn't make it last year. So this year we will look at new ways to draw more organic textures. And then we want to rework our stairs and passages. We want to create dynamic doors and windows instead of having assets, having something that can scale depending on how big a door should be or how big a window should be. And then we have general platform updates where we just say, okay, our website needs to be updated a little bit and follows along with all the new features and all the new tools. So this is quite some work that we want to achieve this year. And depending on how fast we are, we will see how far we get. We've made quite some effort in the first quarter, so I'm happy with that. And then it's up to you to vote what we should tackle next.
I like it. I like it. Please, when you're doing doors, can we also change the color of the doors?
Yes.
Good.
Yes. So the general idea is that there will be something, probably something where the art, because the problem with doors is you want dynamically scalable doors and colorizable doors, but you also want artists to create doors. So how do you tackle that? Because you can't just stretch a door. That would look terrible. So we're thinking about ways to create something like a door frame that is created by the artist, that might be created in a way that is repeatably placeable. But then you have the dynamic doors that will just adjust to the size of what you have defined. It's still concept phase, so we don't know yet how exactly we want to address them. But I believe that we can do something that you will like.
There you are. Okay, folks. Now we've been speaking about the roadmap. We've spoken about so many things. It's a little bit longer episode than normal, simply because we're catching up for time, which I think is good. I see Punch Clock says, and then there's a trapdoor for adventurers who ask tricksy questions. So yeah, trapdoor should be allowed. You should then click on the trapdoor, and that'll take you to the level below, wouldn't it? In a perfect world.
That's what we want to do with stairs, basically. Stairs and passages is one of the concepts, is that when you click on a stair, as playing in DungeonFog, if you use the campaigns in DungeonFog, that when you click on the stairs, you can define the outcome, and you will automatically load the map on with the highlight and the viewport centered around the stairs of the receiving end, basically.
Fantastic. Okay, so there you go. There you go. Absolutely. Now, there was a competition running last year, and the winners have been chosen. Shall we switch to the screen to show us the winners, if you have them on hand?
Absolutely. So we because Cyberpunk 2077 was a big thing and was hyped. And we said, okay, this is amazing. We all, Bodhi even took vacation just to play it. We said we want to do a Cyberpunk contest. And I think we can switch now. You give me the countdown.
Yep, 3, 2, 1, switch.
So we've made a Cyberpunk contest. And because those maps are amazing, all of the submissions were just mind-blowing. And it was really hard to show them through DungeonFog, so I decided to just bring them in Photoshop and show them to you through Photoshop here. So Damien submitted the Getaway, which is an amazing map. Look at how big this is.
It's
Wait,
a
how do
huge
I?
map.
It's an absolutely huge map, and it's intended to be a chase, I assume, by the name. Damien will, he's in the chat, so he can easily answer questions if you want to know more. You can find those maps, I believe, in the public library as well. So this was the map that was submitted by Damien. And it's so many details, like with the cars and the road signs and everything there. It is amazing. I believe, Damien, you have to tell the chat, where did you get those cars? Because I know that they're not from DungeonFog, but you've imported them. So maybe you can drop, was it 2-minute tabletop? I can't remember. Maybe you can drop a note in the chat where those cars came from. Then we have the synth chopping block, which was a 2-layered map with the street level. Let me just again zoom in here. With the street level, and look how cyberpunk that one is, like with the tags and the graffiti and the trash everywhere. So it's a very beautiful cyberpunk map with the street level and then the apartment level, where you can then go upstairs into the apartments. And I might, now that I'm looking at it, I might have missed one map. I can't remember if there was one map above. So this is the map that was done by Korthal.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Synth chopping block.
There you go. Absolutely spectacular. I love it. I love it. And Damien, the DM, has come in. The Getaway is actually the name of the bar in his map, and the cars were from 2-minute tabletop. Correct.
Okay, perfect. So the next one was really interesting. It was very creative. I didn't expect anything like that, and I was absolutely amazed and had a lot of fun. And that is Rotocraft. That map is actually a giant helicopter with 2 decks. So this map that was done by, on Discord, you know him as B4550, is done as a map with the top view, which is just the helicopter, and then you have those 2 decks. I'm so used to using the right mouse from DEIOS to now I have to use the spacebar. So yeah, so you have the cockpit, you have the seats, and you can even go down into the lower deck where you have all the other stuff here. And if you look at the map in DungeonFog, it is perfectly aligned around the helicopter, so it works quite nice. And that was a very creative, very fun way to do a map for Cyberpunk.
I absolutely love the use of the arrows as well.
Yep, true. End of Line was even a bigger map because it has, oh no, I forgot to label it. My bad, my apologies. You have the sewers level going up into, I believe, the ground floor. So from left to right. So from the sewers, you can go into the ground floor, where you have the parking lot and all the rooms. And then you can go up into the first floor, where you can already see the rooftops here and there. And then you can go up into the second floor. So that was done by RPGX Studios, and is also quite a beautiful map.
Yeah, let me use the
especially
colours.
with the lighting. Yeah. And then we have the beers and guns, which I just used for the Foundry preview that we did, which is also a bar. And there was quite a long story written to that, which was also amazing. So that was also one of the maps that got submitted. And I can't remember which one won. For me, they were all winners, but the community voted on one specific one, and unfortunately, I don't have that here right now. I can't remember. Maybe Damien remembers, a forecaster. But this was our Cyberpunk contest, and as I said, we can switch back basically.
All right.
Yep.
3, 2, 1, switch.
So. Let me just quickly bring my zoom back here. There you go. It was a great competition. We ran a few contests last year, especially in fall last year, but we've learned that we shouldn't do too many competitions because then people will just not take part. So this year there will be more competitions, but probably we're trying to keep it to a monthly competition or something like a quarterly competition, tailored around a specific theme. So we don't, obviously, because January is already over, we don't have a January competition, but we will talk about a February competition possibly, or something that is interesting for this quarter, where we say, okay, I know that Wizard of the Coast has released a new book or is about to release a new book. Maybe we can do something around that. We will see. But competitions will be a thing this year as well. And I would be more than happy to see your submissions.
There you go. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Till, with that, it's been a full show. I want to thank everyone who has stayed with us throughout this hour and a half. The special one. Forecaster71 says the winner was the map Beers and Guns by Shizuki, or Shizukai, I should say, Shizukai. So there we are. Fantastic. And so we saw that wonderful map. Till, that's it from us for this month, I believe. We'll be back in February at our new time slot, which is 7 UTC. So
exactly. Yes. Then we will be talking about the progress that we have made until then in DEIOS. And I assume by then we will most likely have a time range of when the new patch is going to drop. And with that said, thank you, everyone. Thank you for staying, because it was a long show, but so many things to tackle, so many things to show. And as always, thank you, Guy, for being such an amazing moderator.
My pleasure.
Journey master.
It's always fun to see behind the scenes. I don't know how many scenes there are behind it, but it's a blast. Thank you, Till, for coming and joining us. Thank you to Boaty as well for joining us. And with that, it comes to the end. So until next time, happy map making. Goodbye.
See you. Bye.